Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Morgan. I am the marketing coordinator here at Bryant Stratton College Online. Today's webinar is your first 30 days of the job. We are lucky enough to have our career expert, Stephen Krempl, lead our webinar. Stephen led our first webinar a couple weeks ago. He is the president of Krempl Communications, which is a company that focuses on management and executive development. Before starting Krempl Communications, he was the vice president of global learning at Starbucks Coffee Company and served in senior training and education roles at Fortune 500 companies such as Yum Brands, PepsiCo and Motorola. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Stephen.
Hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Stephen.
All right, thank you very much. Hey, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Krempl, and I'm calling in from Singapore today. The last time I was in Seattle, and I'm now halfway around the world. But I've been just out here in Asia working with a couple of clients for the last couple of weeks. And I'm, again, so glad to be associated with Bryant and Stratton College and the webinar series to get you ready for the work world, or if you're already in the work world, how to stand out in that work world. The last seminar I talked about the how to interview and having interview techniques, the tools and some of the techniques and some of the tricks, and hopefully some of you have tried some of them or even practiced them using them. All I can say, it's all about the practice, though. For anything you would ever hear anybody say or do, it's all about the practice. When you practice, you become comfortable. When you become comfortable, you become confident. And when you're confident, you stand out. All right? So today's topic is real simple. If you're hired, now what? So you got the interview, now you're hired. So what do you do? What do you need to focus on in the first 30 days to fit in fast, though? And why am I even doing this topic, though? Because, you know, I wish when I was first starting out, I had somebody to help me out in exactly what to do, because I was pretty bad at it, and I was knocking my head against the wall. And I finally learned it. You know, you watch and you perfect your technique. But then, you know, for me personally is then I want to teach others so that they can shorten your learning curve and kind of give you a heads up. You still may make some mistakes, but don't make all the mistakes I made, though. All right? So that's my promise to you. I'm going to give you all the tips and tricks that that I know, and hopefully you get something out of it. So one of the things we're going to take, the key takeaways for the webinar today are, first, understand why the first few days are crucial and what information you need to seek out first, though. As you know, when you're new and you're the new one on the block, whether you're a fresh grad or whether you join the company new, everybody's watching you, and you're the new person, right? So they're watching you more closely, and you have to figure out a way of making yourself fit in. And that's the thing. So many of the things we're going to talk about is teaching you how to fit in and fit in fast. Then we're going to be talking about the three key categories and the elements for getting to know the company and fitting in fast. So if anything else, later on there'll be one chart that has all the things there. If you do even half of it, I'd say if you even do a third of it, you'll be way ahead of everybody else. The third point here, always have an introduction and something interesting about yourself ready. Everybody knows their introduction, they have their name and whatever, but I'm going to teach you a trick right in there so that you open up yourself to be able to connect to people a little bit more, though. The last one is how to look confident, communicate effectively, and stand out. And I assume if you do your first three in the top, you're going to be able to do that. I want to just make that point about that practice thing again. So I was just teaching a couple of executives just last week about how to get to be able to communicate better with their local staff and how to get them to participate, though. So intellectually, they got it. I had the model. I even told them the techniques. I kind of asked them. They all nodded their head. But the rubber met the road when I said, okay, now, so since you all know this, I'm going to go around the table. There are only 8 of them, right? And I'm going to ask you. I said, Jim, so tell me what would be your first 3 lines that you would say in a meeting that you would open up. So he said, he said his 3 lines, and I had another colleague of mine there with me, Jonathan, and I said, Jim, I don't know about you, about Jonathan, but I wouldn't say a thing if you said those 3 lines. And Jonathan said the same thing, and he was totally shocked because he definitely thought that he had it down. So don't ever make that mistake, okay? Just keep practicing and follow exactly what people tell you, and you'll probably be a lot further ahead. Let me move ahead. So here's the key question then. The key question is, do you know the intellectual and behavioral skill sets for identifying what to focus on and how to prepare for the first few days on the job? So know exactly how to communicate confidently, connect personally, and stand out in the work world. And we call this growing executive mindsets for your first 30 days. So let me just tell you a story. Let me just relate a story about what happened to me. When I first joined Motorola, I was the last one in the group. The group had 9 people in it, and I'm the last one in them. I wasn't the most senior. In fact, I didn't have the most degrees. Most of them had PhDs in the group. So I was the junior guy, though. Now, within a very short time, I decided to propose something to management, and they actually adopted it. We were running a seminar series for other companies to adopt Motorola's Six Sigma methodology that we introduced many years ago. There were 4 main speakers that were delivering the one-day seminar. 2 came from the U.S., 1 was a local expat, was an American, and there was myself. The difference was each of those 3 had 20 years of experience in Motorola, and I had less than 2 at that time. But I sounded like I'd been working in the company for years, though. In fact, most people would come to me right after the seminar and say, so how many years have you been working in Motorola? And I always evade the answer because if I really told them, they'd be pretty disappointed. I'd go, oh yeah, many years, don't worry about it. It's a long time, though. And the tricks all come down to what I'm going to be telling you today, though. So hopefully if you want to know even how to impress people that way, one of the things, just listen up. So why is this important? Because many people think you just have to work hard, be smart, and shoot for that next successful job or the next position and you're going to get it, though. Actually, it's the reverse, though. So many of you think, I'm going to be chasing and I'm going to get success. Very good philosophy, actually. But there's a better one, though. If you are confident and you fit in and you stand out in your company, it is the other way around. Success starts chasing you, though. So the trick is to focus on how good you fit in and how confident you are in whatever you do, though. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not asking you to do stuff that you're not confident in, your attitude, your knowledge, and your expertise. I'm assuming you know how to do that. But the people who have all the stuff in blue, that means you're confident, you know what you're doing, and you fit in the organization, you go ahead a lot quicker than those who don't. So let me just share a couple of things here with you. Now, I'm assuming you know this, right? So, do you have these abilities to be ready for the future? So you know what you want to do. You know how to interview better than most because we've talked about that and we've been preparing you. And now when you get there, what do you pay attention to, though? Just yesterday, in fact, I was with a friend and we were counseling a gentleman who just joined a bank. And he had an interesting problem, so to speak. He was working in a role that he did not like at all. And then he wanted to do something else. And his idea was, I'm going to try and get that role that I want and not focus on being good at what I'm doing. We counseled him and said, look, be good at what you want, But the main thing you need to do is get networked in the organization, let other people know that you want that job, but you have to add value in your current job, though. And only if you do that, then you're going to be able to stand out. So the next slide is actually pretty interesting because this is what I tell people all the time. Number one is you have to increase your visibility. I don't care whether you're an introvert. The extroverts have no problem in this. I'm an introvert myself, okay? But many times you have to do, otherwise nobody knows you exist, especially if you're a new person. If you're able to do it just some of the time, you're going to be able to be noticed a lot more than everybody else. Second one is to raise your energy. I'm not sure whether you realize how energetic you are or how calm you are or how lack of energy you are. But in any time, if you need to stand out and be visible, you have to raise your energy, though. All right? Thirdly, you have to be different, though. Don't just go with the flow with everybody else. You can say, yes, I agree with Stephen, but my point of view is this. So in being different, you have to share your point of view that might be slightly different, though. Okay? The fourth one is you really have to add value, though. So depending on whatever position you're in, add value in that. Then you can be proactive, especially when you practice your stuff, and that's how you continue. So I may be preaching to the choir. Most of you think this is, oh yeah, I know that. So it's same like those executives who said, yeah, I know that. Many of you don't even know how to change your energy level from 50% to 75 to 100 to 125. And that's a dial that we have internally for all of us. But anyway, all I'm saying is, do these four things as part of the thing. I haven't even got to the techniques yet, but these are important kind of foundational things that you need to be able to pay attention to. In the last session, just to catch up so that you realize what we're doing, here is this. We talked about the keys to answering all questions is to understand the purpose behind the question. The reason I'm telling you this is to catch you up because you have to understand your purpose of your first few days. Your purpose of your first few days is to be able to fit in. And the way that you need to fit in is do one of these three things, right? Remember we talked about that the last time. Your three basic categories of competencies are your task skills, your people skills, and your personal qualities. Now, why are we talking about this? Because remember we said when we had that, then I told you the difference between answering a question and showing what you know. That means the competency, right? A task competency, so we had the question, what is the distance between the sun and the earth? And I told you that giving the answer does not tell me what you know about it. Telling me how you got the information tells me that you have a skill in order to get it. Answering the question doesn't tell me anything. So, we talked about task skills. So here were the task skills. Some of you remember it. For those of you who don't, you're getting a quick lesson right here. So these are the skills that people are looking to you when you first join. So what are your analytical skills like? What are your decision making like? You know, are you innovative? Are you creative? Are you detailed? Are you methodical? And many of these things come across when people ask you questions and how you answer them. So remember the question I asked the last time. I said, if you were in an interview, or even if you come to in a company, people will say, hey, tell me a little bit about your successes you had in college, or tell me a little bit about successes in your previous company. And some of you will go, well, I won X prize. You know, I won the best something or the other prize. Well, that's great. That's an answer, though. But what you should have said was, you know, I had the opportunity, Stephen, to lead a team to analyze and creatively come at the solution for problem X, let's call it X. And with the method that we use, which is method XYZ, we showed up and we won the prize. Now, what is the difference between the first answer and the second? The first one, you just said, I won the prize. The second one showed me how you won the prize. And many of these skills and the competencies that you had to do. You led a team, you analyzed, you creatively, you showed solutions and stuff. So think about the answers you give in the first 30 days. Are you showing people that you know things that you may not be willing, because people don't know you very well, right? So you're showing, you have to describe competencies, not just get the answer, though. The second thing we said was the personal qualities, right? So we said, hey, most people say, here's my list of personal qualities. I'm achievement-oriented. I have real tenacity. I have a great orientation to change. I'm action-oriented, yada, yada. Same thing. So tell me a little bit about yourself. You could say, I'm a really great person and I'm hardworking. Sounds great, though. In fact, there's nothing wrong with the answer, though. But here's what you could say that makes it even sound better, though. You know, I've always set goals in life, and I've worked towards achieving them. And I'm good at taking the initiative and quickly getting to action to get that goal, though. Now, that paints a very different picture than saying, I'm a great person and I'm hardworking, though. So be careful about the competency and very quickly trying to answer a question. So you have to think about that, think about how you need to do that. The best way to do that is really giving it a answer or telling a story that people can see how you applied some of these competencies. So the last one is pretty much what we're talking about today in your first 30 days. And that is your people skills. We assume they hired you because of your tasks and your personal qualities. But your people skills is what shows up in the first 30 days. So how are you going to persuade people? How do you communicate? How is your interpersonal skills with the team members, with the people who work in your department, maybe across departments, or everybody on the floor and on different floors, whatever it is? How do you build relationships, and how you start building relationships, and how are you networking, though? So if you're only talking to the person in the next cubicle, or you're only talking to the person who you go to lunch with all the time, then you're not maximizing the opportunity, because people will start to say, and again, remember, they're watching you via the news. And that person, so-and-so, he really gets along with everybody else on the floor, or on the team, or whatever it is. And that's a very important thing to do, because people always want to know whether you fit in. It doesn't matter which level you are at. Whether when I join organizations, even at the senior level, is the same thing. Do you get along with the people on the team? And that's one of the key skills that you need to be able to focus on when you get in. So, do I get along with people? It is not, can I do the job? Yes, you have to do that as well, but you have to spend more time on trying to network and get to know people and get people to like you, though. Right. Next one. So, why would you do this? Because your idea here, we talk about the approach pyramid. Right at the bottom of the pyramid is survive, then you get cruise, contribute, and win. I talked about this the last time. I said, if you're only in the job just to survive, that's one way of approaching it. Then you don't really care, though. Some people are in the job just to cruise, though. Hey, I got enough money, I'm paying my rent, I got my car payment, I'm done. Okay? But if you really want to get in an organization, you should be either contributing or you're planning to win or help the company or the group or the team to win, though. But in order to do that, you have to do a little bit more than if you were planning to cruise, though. So here was the analogy I gave. I said, look, this is like going to class and trying to survive the class, which is, I'll get a D, cruise in the class, which is, okay, a C will be fine. A contribute is, okay, I'll score a B. And then if you really want to win in that class, you're shooting for an A, though. But as all of you will know, to get an A or B requires a lot more work than a C or a D, though. So that's the approach pyramid. The point is this, though. What is that question that I have right on top there? What do others say your approach is? So you come in and people go, man, that guy is, he really started hitting the road running and he's contributing already. Man, that guy, she's helping on the team and she really trying to help us to win. In your first 30 days, people are judging you and placing you somewhere on that pyramid, though, whether they say it or not. Though. I can give you countless numbers of people that join either my teams or people who've joined the organizations where I go, that guy's good, but he's a cruiser, though. And how I tell they're a cruiser, when we come to the next slide and we talk about other different things, the three categories, is 4:45, packing up already and starting ready to go, though. Now, you may think, guess what? My job set is I'm 9 to 5, so 4:45 is all right to pack up, but it may or may not be something that is good in a company that you join. So you have to watch for those things, all right? I know it may suit your lifestyle, but you have to watch about how it fits everybody else's lifestyle in that organization, though. So the next slide is this, though. So the real path to your success, the ones that I found is this. Number one, P is P-A-T-H, right? First one is your presence, how you come across. I don't care whether it's your first meeting. In fact, your first meeting is probably really, really important already because people you know will say, and Sally here is new to us. Hey, Sally, tell us a little bit about yourself, though. If that is the first time you're thinking about talking about yourself, you're in deep whatever, okay? Won't even mention it. So that's the kind of thing that you need to prepare yourself. How you come across. Now, Sally or Joe or Jim or Steve, the only way I can come across being confident is if I'm ready and it says, let me tell you about myself. And I've already thought through it and I make it seem like it's natural, but then people in the back of mind going, man, she has really present. She's confident. And then they'll whisper to the other person, she's a good hire. All right? Well, it's a good thing we had that person join us from that organization because I think they're going to add to our team or our organization. And that's the kind of thing people talk about all the time, right? They may not tell you, but that's what's done. Your ability to connect, the second one, your ability to engage others. So the next point, so this is really important as well, but most people think the ability to engage is to be likable. Yes, you can be likable, but actually it's more important to do one of the key skills that I'm going to tell you later on, and I'm going to tell you in the next slide. So you're going to get it right up in front in the next slide. So your ability to connect is actually less about just being likable, but doing some of the things and saying some of the things that people want to hear, and they'll go, yes, that person is one of us, all right? And we'll tell you in a little bit. The next one is take charge, though. So most leaders, managers, and supervisors like to see when somebody is new and they go, they put up their hands and say, well, I don't mind doing that. Whatever it is, I'm not suggesting that you put up your hands to do things that you're not capable of doing, but usually in an organization, you'll be able. They'll be glad to see that you're putting your hands up and just saying, I'm going to volunteer for something. I remember the first time I joined Motorola, and again, this is the same organization that I volunteered to do that talk for the one-day thing. I put my hand up even before that to join the organizing committee for opening the new plant up. Now, I'm going, okay, what's the worst I can do? So, I joined the committee, they assigned me something, but the committee had such a high profile that anything you do, if you do a good job, i.e. there's 10, 12, 15 people, that you're going to get recognized and noticed up front early, though. So I did the easiest thing that I thought I had, which I knew my skill was, I put my hand up and said, hey, nobody wants to be the MC, I'll be the MC, though. Okay? Now, why did I even choose to be the master of ceremonies? Because on the opening day, not only was the CEO there were about 1,000 other people were there. People got to know me pretty quickly, though. And that's one of the things. So you have to kind of decide again, are you there to cruise, survive, cruise, contribute, win? And if you have that, remember the slide about standing out, you need to be visible in the organization. So do something. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to MC, but you can just volunteer for something in your group, but you have to do that. Really important. Now, helping others, you can do that if you can, and blend in. The idea in the end is once you practice that after your first or second or third organization, then you'll be able to blend in any organization, any culture, at any level. The 4 companies that Morgan talked about that I worked at, and you may have read, Motorola, Pepsi, Yum Brands, which is KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell, and Starbucks, couldn't be 4 more different cultures amongst themselves, though. They're very, very different cultures. But I can tell you, by going to the next slide and doing the things that we're going to show you in the next slide, those you can fit in anywhere very quickly if you really like the work that you do, i.e. 1, you know the work, so you're good and competent in the work, and then you use the techniques that we're going to talk about in the next slide. So I'm going to kind of show you the next slide, and so if you want to take down notes, this is the one you want to take down notes on, because some of you may say, oh, it's kind of simple. But remember, just like the practice, it may look simple, and as the people who execute it may look like, oh, it's really easy, it's probably difficult. And they probably practiced it a lot. Okay, so here you go. Here's the first one. Your first category is, what you need to find out when you get in first is the culture of the organization. Now, this may sound real, oh my God, is the culture of the organization. No, there's some specific things you need to figure out. Number 1, what is the energy level of the space, of the company? Okay? Every company has an energy level. When you go in, you need to match yours to the company that you're in. Some companies, like Yum Brands, is a high-fiving type of company, though. All right? The Motorola is an engineering company. Everybody comes, they don't high-five, though. They're more serious, okay, and they're more buttoned down, and they're more process-oriented, and you can almost feel that. Now, why am I saying this, though? Because you might be a stick in the mud if you were a high-fiving person in a company that was a little more low energy and or process-oriented, or if you were the process-oriented person in a high-energy company not willing to do whatever it is. So remember, you have to match the energy level in that particular organization. And if you're paying attention to it, you will see it and feel it straight away. Okay? Now, audible patterns, this is the same thing. It kind of builds on the energy level. When you walk into the office or the building, is there a lot of noise? Do people talk loud? Do people talk softly? Do people whisper? Do people shouting across each other and giving recognition? Or nobody says anything and they put their heads down? I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just telling you that that's one thing you need to pay attention to. Like, again, you can't be the one, on your phone talking to your brother, your cousin, or your friend going, hey, this place is great, and everybody else is silent, right? And you're oblivious to it, and people are going to go, oh, that's the new guy, or that's the new girl over there, she's, talking her head off. Immediately you do something like that, you don't fit in really, okay? Third one, it's kind of obvious, is space, though. Now, space may be your cubicle where you sit, whatever. The fastest way to fit in is if you make your space personal. So firstly, watch out what other people are doing in their space, right? Usually, I won't say usually, not all companies, but usually people who have been there for a while have personal artifacts. They have a little plant, they have pictures of something or the other, they have a favorite this or that on their table, they have a little chime that somebody gave them. I would go in and bring stuff and make yourself feel like you've been there for a long time now. It's no different when you go into a house. When you go to a house, sometimes when people, move into a home, they go, oh, you've been here for just a little while, because they see no paintings, no stuff up on the walls, no pictures, and everything's in boxes and stuff like that. So one of the fastest ways to see people if you fit in, if you make sure your space that you're in is all done up nicely and fitted in. No different than moving to a dorm or something if you were in college or wherever you went to, right? So same thing though. Now, so it looks like you've been around. The other one, ownership. Okay, so sometimes, depending on your organization, it might be a privately owned organization. Now, some are privately owned, some are public companies. Some companies are more thrifty, some companies are more spendthrift. Watch what the company does in terms of its ownership. So some people like to say we act like owners, so we don't spend a lot of money here. We won't. They spend on stuff that they would pay for themselves versus getting the company to pay for it, right? So watch how people spend dollars, and that's still under the culture, though. Okay. So the ownership, stated values, though. You will walk into companies, and the first thing they have is, the 7, things that are leadership qualities that we want in everybody. Or they go to somebody else and they have the 12 qualities of something or the other on the wall. So the thing is to see what they have on the walls, and then talk to people about, hey, how does this stuff work, though? And if they can't explain it to you, it's up there and it doesn't mean very much. But then you would say, so how is it like here, though? Okay? And those are the stated values that people will tell you that really exist. One of the things I can say from the Starbucks standpoint when I went in, up on the walls were always up the green apron behaviors. And you talk to anybody, when I went in, one of the first things I did is, hey, these green apron behaviors, what do you guys do with it, though? And immediately, people go rattle off, well, we have recognition cards, we have it a passport, we have this, that. And if they can rattle off 3, 4 things, you know it's important and you know it's using it. So you need to figure out what are those values, if they have it up on the wall or they have it somewhere, are the people using? Because you need to start using it as well. So guess what? Like in Starbucks, though. So the first thing I did, because I knew that they had the green apron recognition card, my first meeting, I wrote a recognition out for somebody and I gave it out, though. What happens when you do that? Immediately people look at you and go, man, that person's like one of us. Okay? So watch out for that, though. Guys, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't even, there are about 20 more of these things. And this is only culture. Remember, there's 3 other categories, right? You take something there, just pay attention, and then watch. Power-based, though. You need to figure out who has the power on that floor or in that company. Many times is the gatekeepers, as they call them. It could be the admin. It could be a manager. It could be a director. It could be somebody lower in the organization, but never get fooled. Always try and find out who is the power base. Okay? Who has the power on the floor, though. It's very important because firstly, you don't want to step on that person's toes, but it's also very important for you to find out how that works, and things usually revolve around these people who have the power base. Okay? And it's not necessarily the person that has the highest rank, i.e. the SVP or the VP or whatever it is. It's definitely interesting. I remember the time in Pepsi, and we had a lady who was in the company for, I think she was there for 18 years. So she was one of the oldest ones there in terms of tenure. And she was only a senior manager or something. But anytime anybody would come in, they knew she had the power base because she could pick up the phone and go straight to the CEO because they started way back when. He ended up as CEO, but she was still wherever she wanted because that's her choice. But she had a lot of power, and it was very important to know that. It had nothing to do with the position in the company. Socialization is how do people get along? Is it a company that goes out together on Friday? Do we have a company wind downs in the organization? Do we have parties with the family? Is it only parties or functions with people in the organization? You have to figure that one out, and it'll become very obvious very, very quickly. The last one on the culture I put is dress code. And I'll tell you this with a story because You want to fit in, but sometimes dress code, there are many unwritten rules, and or somebody will tell you very quickly, maybe in orientation even, some of these things. But here's the one. I had a friend who joined us at Yum Brands. I was in Dallas, Texas office. And he is a very senior guy. He was a VP at the time already. I was at the time a senior director. So he is a VP. He comes in, we had dress down Friday. So everybody goes, okay, dress down Friday. So he's thinking from his previous company, dress down is jeans and kind of a polo shirt kind of thing. He got the polo shirt right. He got the jeans absolutely wrong, though. So here's what happened, though. The lid opens. I walk in. Our international president walks in, and John, the new guy, walks in. I'm in my dress down, which is khakis and polo. The president was in his khakis and polo, and John's in polo and his jeans, right? The president turns to John and says, "Are you doing gardening today?" And you could have seen his draw job because the president, and the rule was, and it was his rule, no jeans allowed because in his mind, jeans is way too low as from a dress standpoint. Now, you and I may go, come on, that's a bit much, right? But you have to know the rules and the culture of that particular organization. I'm giving you extreme examples so that you just pay attention to it, even though it may seem like dress code is a no big deal. It was a big deal to the president, and John he never wore jeans again, I can tell you that, though, after that. So, next one. This one I think is even more important than from all three. If any one of them, for me personally, because I understand most of this other one, this one is a big one. Stories, though. Now, people would say, what's so important about stories, though? The stories that you tell, so either from your own experience of something you experienced in the company, the stories that you tell of something you heard from other people in the company, something you heard from customers or your family or friends, or if you were in a bank, the front line you visited, say you're in corporate headquarters, or from management or from colleagues, is very, very important. So, and why this is important, this is the thing that I told you. Remember when I was presenting, when I was less than 2 years and all the other guys were at 20 years in the company? The reason people know you've been around is because you have more, people used to call them war stories. I just call them stories, though. And the faster you get the stories is the faster people think you fit in, though. So let me give you an example from Starbucks. I'll give you my example, though. I had my first 2 weeks in Starbucks, I was in the store. So I was working in the store to understand how to be a barista and that whole, and how to make coffee and how to pull shots and everything else. But in the stores, I was, because I know, pulling out 3 or 4 stories that I needed. Because when I go back to corporate headquarters with my actual job, people will say, hey, tell us about your experience, or I'm not going to say, well, the job was hard and, pulling shots. No, I go straight to the story. And I'll start with one story for you, just to show you the type of story. I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and a brother and a sister walked into the Starbucks restaurant, and I was looking for the store manager. I was so happened to be standing next to the store manager. And the brother and the sister spoke up and said, you guys, I just want to say, firstly, our father just passed away last week, and we said, oh, gee, we were really sorry, but apparently he came here every Wednesday for the last 2 years, and whomever did this must have made a big impression on my dad, because he has kept every cup of coffee that had a little scribble on it. And the scribble was, have a great day, John. You're great. Nice seeing you again, John. His dad washed the cups and kept them because of the messages on the cups. And in Starbucks it was, that's the power you have when you put something nice or do something nice to somebody. Now, immediately when I had this story, I go back, I tell the story because I experienced it though. People go, oh my God, you really understand our culture here. Yep, I've been here for 2 weeks though. Okay? Now I'll give you a second story though. It wasn't even my story though. I spoke to the regional director who was in charge of the region asking how I was getting along though. He told me a story when so I told him my story about the brother and the daughter. He told a story about Jim though. And you will find this really interesting because he says he was doing his 2 weeks, and then this guy called Jim comes in, and the manager runs over to Richard and says, "Hey, what? This is Jim." So Jim comes in, and Jim knows everybody in the restaurant. Okay, so Jim's calling out the people at the back, but the most interesting thing is as Jim takes his order of the coffee, he dropped $100 bill in the tip jar. $100. You did not listen to that wrongly. It is $100 bill. So Jim drops his $100 bill, and then he goes off, and he runs off. So Richard now goes to the next store that's in the area again, and here's Jim coming in again, though. And the manager runs up to him and says, oh, here's Jim. Here's our favorite customer. Jim goes, orders another drink, and guess what? He dropped another $100 bill in the tip jar. Now, Jim must have a lot of money, but even people who have a lot of money don't drop $100. So this Richard said he couldn't take it anymore. So he went up to Jim and said, hey, my name is Richard. I'm the regional director. I've noticed you in the 2 stores, you put $100 in this. I could have paid people to make me feel this good. Now, that wasn't even my story. That was Richard telling me about his story. But when I went back to the store and told that story because everybody else hadn't heard of it, they go, man, Stephen knows about our company, though, and the culture. But it wasn't even that, though. Right? So hopefully you get the grip. You have to find stories. It doesn't matter whether your family, you heard it from somewhere, somebody tells you, or the best one is this, though. You go and you talk to people in your company, and you just ask them this question. Take this question down. What is your favorite story that you've heard about the company, though? And people will tell you that, oh man, you don't know, with this, and they start telling you, now you've got a story though. It's either you experience it or you tell a story about something else. And it is funny because for me, from my personal thing, I kind of understand the culture, you kind of water it. I seek out stories from people all the time so that when the next meeting comes up, and somebody says, hey, Stephen here, introduce yourself, and I'll go, yeah, I'm the story. But, what I really like to say is, and then I tell my story, though. And people go, man, that guy really fits in. He really knows about us. No, I just heard one story, though. Right? And if you have 2 or 3 or 4 stories, people feel like you fit in. Not a trick, very important, though. The third one, it's called time. Time orientation. You need to understand how the company functions this way, okay? First one, meetings. Do meetings start on time? Some companies, when I do training in many companies, and I either meet the senior managers or just have meetings there, I know the culture of the company by the time the meeting starts. So the meeting says 9 o'clock. Some companies, 9 o'clock, everybody's there now. Many other companies, 10 past 9, people stroll in, 9:15, they stroll in, and they all have excuses, and everybody kind of knows it, so everybody does it. So you need to know that, because if you're one who strolls in late for class, or you're the one who likes to stroll in after the time, and everybody is there before time, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. So watch these things. Timing on meetings. The other one, it may sound real obvious, but I'm telling you, there's a big difference, though. Every company is different. In fact, sometimes every manager is different in terms of where you're working within the company as well. Next one, start of day. Do people, same like the meetings, is everybody there at 8 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever time you're hired to start at 9 o'clock? Is everybody there right before? People there 15 minutes before? Are they people straggling in over the time? Is there a punch card? Of course, a punch card, then it's kind of hard to be late. But many places don't have punch cards. But again, people are watching. Does so-and-so, is Stephen coming late over the time that he's supposed to be there? So if you've got the meetings, you've got to start of the day, here's your next one, same thing. When do you leave them? So I mentioned it earlier today, in the beginning of the talk. Do you start packing up at 4:45, or do you work through to about 5:15 where everybody else starts to leave, and then you leave? I suggest, my personal suggestion, if you're new, leave a little later than everybody else. Just for the start, at least. Just watch and see that, and then you see what happens, okay? Now, this one may seem a little strange to you, but I'm going to put it down because it comes under the category of time, though. Weekends. What is the culture or the expectation of you working weekends, though? Some of you are going, I don't work weekends, I work Monday to Friday. Yep. In Bentonville headquarters for Walmart, they are supposed to work Mondays to Fridays, but all management meetings are on Saturday morning, though. Because, and that's the funny thing, because you ask anybody, I actually went to Bentonville before and talked to it, and people don't like it, but that's the way the company is, so they all do it on Saturdays. And because many of the meetings go the whole morning, many of them go the whole day on Saturday. Okay? So, again, I'm not saying right, wrong, or indifferent. All I'm saying is you better pay attention to this thing called time and what is your expectation of you for weekends. Sometimes people will send you emails on the weekend and expect you to respond now. So this is called responding to emails, text, voicemails, right? Just be aware of the expectation of how fast people want you to respond. Sometimes people say, they send you a text and you see people in the meeting and they're answering emails. That's another culture thing, right? In emails, do people answer text because there's another expectation that if your boss sends you an email or a text, that he wants the answer straight away. He doesn't care whether you're meeting or not or whatever it is. You got to figure that out. I'm just listing it out for you to find out that each company is slightly different, but you got to find out though. This same list of emails, text, and voicemail is the same way you have to find out how your boss or your supervisor wants to be responded to though. So sometimes people say, hey, I need you to get back to me. So is an email enough? Is a text message enough? Is a voicemail enough? Is it okay over the weekend? Do he needs it before the end of the day? Do many people even send you emails in the middle of the night, though? Okay? I'm not scaring anybody here. You probably all know this anyway, just like your friends sending you text messages and stuff in the night, so it doesn't make any difference. All I'm saying is you have to find out these things because, take, for example, an email, though. If your boss expects you to turn it around within an hour and you go, oh, no worries, it's 5 o'clock, I'll respond to it tomorrow. And you come in tomorrow at 8 o'clock, maybe, and respond at 8:05, and he's been waiting for the last 12 hours for your response, though. That's the problem, though, right? In your head, you go, I responded it pretty well. He sent it to me at 5, so, well, I got off work 5. So, and I came in at 8, and I responded within 5 minutes, but he counted the time between 5 and 8 o'clock. So just be aware of these things, right? Now, very simple. There are 3 buckets. It's around time, it's around culture, it's around stories. So if you nail these, okay, in your first 30 days, you need to figure this one out. Just pick a couple of categories. In fact, you should be, so long you know them, you'll be watching out for them. So that's not even the problem. So let's place it. The one thing I do want to do is get the next one very quickly, though. Sorry, projects. So this is the last one, this project, which is when you're given a project, again, what's the time expectation that they want this project in? So take, for example, okay, if you had to hand in the project, it's no different than, well, I guess in college, the professor says he wants it on Wednesday at noon, and if you come in late, it's late. But it's the same thing, right? So it's the project, and they said you have 2 weeks to hand in the project, though. Is the expectation in that company that everything comes on time? Is there an unstated expectation that things have to come in the day before? Or it is okay because it's going into a pile that nobody looks at? Now, I just said that it goes into a pile that nobody looks at. Sometimes we do projects, we work our behinds off, and it goes into a pile that nobody looks at. So don't get, turned off by that. It just is, because there's just so much going on in an organization, right? So let's be aware of those things. So the next one is this. So here's 2 questions that you need to find out. So where do I find out all this information Stephen gave me on these 3 categories of time, culture, stories, and whom do I find this out for? Where do I find it out, or whom? Well, it's very simple. It's the people who are around you, your colleagues, during your onboarding. If they don't tell you those things, ask the questions at onboarding. And this is the orientation, right? I would become friends with any of the admin assistants that you have for your boss or your boss's boss or somebody else, somewhere in the first 30 days. Just get to know them a little better. They'll probably give you the inside scoop better than anybody else, though. Right? So just one of it. So the people around you, you have to actively find out if you're not being told by some in the organization. So very simple to do that. Now, the next one is actually an obvious one. I say it's obvious, but most people don't do it this particular way. So this is just a philosophy of mine. If you want to stand out and you want to connect with people, you have to share a bit of information. So this is about introducing yourself, because you know that people would say, oh, Stephen's new, so Stephen, why didn't you introduce yourself? And most of us end up saying, well, my name is Stephen, and I just joined the organization, and I came from ABCD. And then they sit down, though. Okay? So what I'm suggesting is you do 3 things, though. 1, you give your name. 1, you kind of tell what you do, where you came from. But the 3rd thing is give something interesting about yourself that may open up conversations with people. So let me just read the first one, the first paragraph, right? Hey, my name is Stephen Krempl, and I'm an entrepreneur. My expertise is helping companies develop people capability. So this is the 3rd thing. I love watching NFL football and soccer and focusing on helping college graduates and minority executives. Now, what have I just done? I added in something that is interesting that I'm interested in, because somebody in the room may also be interested in NFL football or soccer or helping college graduates. You see what I mean? You have to put something in that is interesting, that reveals something about yourself, so it may open up a discussion. Now, most of us will go, well, everybody does that, right? No. This was 3 weeks ago. I was in a class, and we did this exercise. These are people who've been in the company between 6, 8 to 10 years. So one person, Jeremy, I remember very clearly, he said, hey, I'm Jeremy, I'm the manager of so-and-so, and I love running marathons. Nobody in the room knew he ran marathons. And I'm going, you got to be kidding me, right? Nobody else knew. I think that maybe I take that back. I think that one lady at the back of the room, there are 25 people in the room who worked in the same company for 6 to 10 years. They didn't know he ran a marathon. Now, might be 2 problems, right? 1, he doesn't share what he likes to do as a hobby. Secondly, they don't get an opportunity to talk about these things. But that one point about marathon left a 5-minute conversation of, really? When do you run? And everybody was starting chiming in, though. And that was the first time he mentioned the word marathon, though. So I'm not suggesting you have to run a marathon. I don't run marathons. I sit down and watch TV, NFL, football, and soccer, though. So it's not like I'm some big athlete or something. You just have to find something interesting that is different that you want to share, right? So here, if you're in a college, you say, hey, I'm a senior with a background in English literature. I have a passion for sport. Okay, you introduce your interesting thing. Or you go, I see myself as a teacher with broader business interests. So But that's something different, though. You're a teacher, but you want to have broader business interests. And somebody will go, tell me a little bit more about that business stuff you're interested in. What are you really interested in? And then you start the conversation, though. Let me go one more. Don't worry about the second paragraph, right? So this is what you should do. Okay? Hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm a second-generation Latino. I have a background in English literature. I like sports, especially football, and I see myself as a teacher with broader business interests. So, same thing, right? Or you go the other one. I'm an engineering student, and I've had researched the oil and gas industry extensively, and I have a deep passion for renewable energy, and I want to make a positive contribution in that area. No, I'm not asking you to make stuff up here, guys, right? I'm asking you to really share stuff, but by adding the line renewable energy and wanting to make a positive contribution in the area, somebody in the room may go, I'm really interested in that too. And in fact, Joe over there, he has this real project that, he's trying to get our company to be more renewable. And what should you do? You put your hand up because, I really like to help Joe because I've done a lot of the research already. And that's how you should start fitting in very quickly, though. Okay? Now, again, it may sound like it's simple, but unless you make an effort and do this all the time, you have to have this kind of stuff ready and thought through. You will not bring it up. Trust me, though. Most people end up giving their name and what their role is, or something simple. They never add something in because they haven't thought through it enough. Next one. So here's your task. You should develop an introduction and an ending pitch. It's only 3 lines, right? Something, your name, you can't forget that one. Your role, or what role you like to be, and something interesting about you. That's all you need to do. Because even in a little cocktail party, you shake your hand, people always remember the interesting thing. They may forget your name and what you do, though. So the guy that's a marathon guy, everybody will remember he runs marathons, right? He becomes a marathon guy. And that's the kind of thing, though. So you need to find something that keeps yourself interesting, okay? Remember, practicing enables you to stand out. It's the things, your path to success, your presence, how you come across, though. The way you come across is by knowing the 3 categories the time, culture, and stories, but your ability to connect with people is the stories, though. Your ability to engage others is by telling things that you know about the company or things that have happened in the company or things that should be happening in the company or things that the customers are talking about at the company or things you've read about the company. That connects you with people, though. Take charge. Volunteer for things that you are interested in, just like the renewable energy story I just gave you, or if you want to join some committee or the other, do that early so that people start to know you. And then, if you have a particular skill that you're better than other people, you're good at computers, you're good at your phone, you're good at apps, you're good at something, there'll be somebody in the organization that may not be as good as you are. Help them out, though. And people will know, hey, that person, they can do, she's a whiz-bang at, this phones or something, or computers, or whatever it is that you do. And unless you tell people that in your introduction, people won't know them. Okay? So we're coming to the end here. I've got 2 more slides, and then we're going to open up for questions. So if you have questions, either send them in or type them in, and Morgan will kind of ask me along with it. And so there are a couple of quotes here. We talk about continuous effort, not strength and intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential, especially when we go into the organization. So it's the effort of finding out, what the culture is like or what the stories are and how people react to from a time perspective in terms of how they deal with work. And then energy and persistence kind of conquers all things. So you got to bring your energy to the organization and that new job and that first 30 days especially. Because if you don't start doing it then, you start to slack off, and that's not a good thing to do when you start going down that hill even before you kind of start from a higher bar in the first 30 days. And then we are what we repeatedly do. So be careful what you've done previously, because if you come in, you want to start doing some of these new skills in terms of figuring out exactly what the organization is like, and then doing things that people expect of you. Now, this slide here, I have a question though. And the question is this: what's the difference between an amateur and a professional though? What's the difference between an amateur and a professional? I can tell you the answer, or I can give you a story that Bo Eason, who used to be safety in the NFL, told me. He said Bo Eason very quickly was picked 5th overall in the NFL draft, and he was the first safety to be picked that year. And I think this is back in the 90s anyway. But he was sharing a story, and he said he ended up being in the San Francisco 49ers, and he had Jerry Rice as his colleague though. And in spring practice, Jerry Rice is a receiver, so you have the quarterback there throwing the ball, and the receivers will run. They catch the ball, they run for about 5 or 10 yards, they stop, they come back, pass the ball to the quarterback, and then they go back behind the line though. And next receiver runs, the quarterback throws, same drill. They stop, and they run a few steps, they come back, pass the ball. Jerry Rice's turn. Now, Jerry Rice is considered one of the best NFL players ever, right? He catches the ball, and he runs 100 meters all the way to the end zone, and then he comes back and passes the ball to the quarterback, and he goes back to the end of the line. Now, Jerry Rice doesn't have to do that, though, right? And here's what he says. So Bo Eason, went to talk to Jerry Rice, and he said this. He said, Jerry, why do you run all the way to the end zone? Are you trying to make people look bad or something? He says, no. He said, Bo, I train my mind. Every time I catch the ball, my body ends up in the end zone. And so he says, it has nothing to do with this. It is my attitude towards practice that makes me a professional versus the amateurs. So the amateurs who run, he calls, they're all professional, but he says the really, really good ones are the ones that have the attitude towards practice. And if you just practice some of the things we even said, and just watch out for a couple of them, that's how you become really, really good in an organization and stand out in the first 30 days. The good news is, if I have one more session that I'm going to be doing a little bit, I think it's in November, and that is how do you continue to stand out beyond your 30 days. And what we're going to do is just talk about this little model here, the GEM model, and I'm going to be focusing a lot more on articulating your point of view, communicating confidently, and connecting personally. And that's kind of just a little heads up for those of you who want to come back and listen. But we're almost out of time, and so hopefully that you'll have some questions. I can answer them, because the last time I didn't have a lot of time to answer questions. And the last slide is this. So you're hired, now what? You're in the first 30 days, and I thank you for listening, and I'm open to questions, Morgan.
Thanks, Stephen. Our first question from Cheryl is, how do I know if I'm not fitting in with the culture of a company?
How do I know if I'm not fitting in the culture of the company?
Yeah.
I guess if you go back to the first one would be the culture fit, and that would be your energy level and whether you when you come into a place you feel comfortable. And it's being a little bit esoteric here. I can go to talk about the things you do, but most people have a gut feel when you come in, and that has to do with your energy level and whether you feel like you're part of a place. That's really how you do it. I can try and pretend and tell you a whole bunch of different things. It's not, though. The second way you try to fit in is if you start having a lot more connections. So if you have networks that are beyond your work group, okay? So if people start to take to you, or you get known very quickly, and people say, hey, let me introduce Cheryl to you, and this so and that's how you know you start to fit in very well, is when your networks as well start to expand very quickly. So those are the top two things I would say in terms of knowing whether you fit in.
All right, our next question is from Mike. Mike wants to know, how important is connecting with coworkers on social media? And there are any downfalls?
So this is where it becomes so everybody connects with each other on social media, right? So now you have to draw the line. So you have to understand the culture of their organization. If you're only dealing with your peers and some of your cohorts in the similar age group, that's fine. Once you get beyond that, I'm not sure. You have to figure out in that organization whether they like it, some people don't, what is considered offensive, not offensive, where's the line, what do people draw the line in terms of what you put up and not. All I can say is this, though. I've seen, personally, 2 people being walked out of the company by security because of stuff they put on social media, and this is negative stuff about the company, huh? So I'm not saying that you're going to do it, Mike, but just be careful, because there are people watching everybody who puts stuff up. And I won't mention names of company, but these guys started an unofficial blog and started talking about the company in their social media space, and people found out very quickly, or they got told on, or ratted on, or whatever. So just be careful. You're bound to do it, but just watch where your lines are, and you have to understand the culture of the organization, though. Great question, though.
Okay, our next question from Vanessa. She would like to know, how long does it take for you to feel like you're a part of the culture of a company?
You can, again, if it's back to feeling and stuff, usually how welcomed you are and and how fast you start making friends. And the best way, in fact, Nielsen has an engagement survey, and the number one question is, do you have a best friend at work, though? So the best indicator of engagement and whether people would stay in an organization is the question, do you have a best friend at work, though? Now, I'm not suggesting you go and make best friends and stuff, but what it is saying is, unless you're able to have good connections with people, why would you want to come to work every day, though, right? If you hate everybody, I'm not saying you will hate everybody, Vanessa, right? But if you go there and you don't like people, and people don't like you and don't look out for you, how would you fit in, though? So back to this whole association and connecting with people, that's probably one of the fastest way you know whether you connect in them. I'm assuming the work that the company does is totally aligned with your values as well, so that's the other thing. That's good. Right. Good question.
Our next question is from Kate. Kate wants to know, how do you talk about your skill without coming off being arrogant?
Yeah, that's a good question, Pete, because there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? And the only way you can do that is firstly practicing exactly what you need to share, and then just sharing it in a nice way, though. Remember just now, remember I gave the example of somebody asked, so tell us about your successes, and he said, well, I won this prize, or you can say, and it's usually tone of voice and the way your body posture is. So if I have my hands on my hips and I say, well, I won this prize and my chest is going out, and suddenly I get a smirk on my face and stuff like that, and people go, okay, show off, right? Or I go, I really had a team together and we worked on it together, and we used a couple of tools that the people taught us, and that's how we achieved it. And I said it in a very genuine way, and people won't treat me as being a show-off. So a lot of it comes to tonality and how you come across from that. I'm glad you asked the question, because these are the things that make the difference between amateurs and professionals, or as in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, make good managers versus great managers. So the good manager can tell people how good they are and come across being arrogant, and people still have to respect them for being good. But the great ones are the ones that are able to say it so nicely that people don't feel offended, but people know that they did great things. And that's, in the end, is something that you have to learn. And you have to get feedback. So the hardest thing, Pete, in fact, I'm glad you asked the question, very few people will give you feedback like that. So let's say, I'm going to use you just for an example. If you came across arrogant, nobody's going to say, hey, Pete, you came across arrogant. You know what they'll do? I'll be whispering to the guy, man, that guy's arrogant, though. Right? And nobody would tell you, though. So that's the biggest problem in organizations. In fact, most of the work that I do, even at senior level, is giving people feedback, because you know why? Nobody else gives them feedback. It's the strangest thing. People will give you feedback about your work and stuff, but nobody kind of tells you about some of these things that you are asking, which is a great question to ask. Fine line. Arrogance, confidence, right? Tonality is a lot of it, and until, we meet face to face, or, I can give you some coaching that way, it's hard to tell, but watch for your tonality, okay? And posture of, putting your hands on hips and trying to, act like you know it all. We all know the class know it all, right? And it's the way they act, so that's a great question, though.
All right, Stephen, and our last question comes from Scott. Scott wants to know how to differentiate the expectation of response on emails when you're trying to separate your work from your professional life from your personal life, and your boss constantly is emailing you at 11 or 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah. So this is a great question, Scott, because most people have this dilemma a lot. And the way I tell people is this. One is, firstly, you've got to find out the expectation of the boss, right? So firstly, you've got to ask, though. And somewhere along the line, you ask him nicely, you says, hey, Steve, or hey, Mary, when you send stuff, you expecting me to answer on Saturday, or no? I will if you need to, and then see what they say, because sometimes bosses, okay, this is gross generalization here and stereotyping, but bosses are so busy doing stuff that even on weekends they forget to have a life, right? So when they forget to have a life, they think everybody else doesn't have a life. And all you need to do is to tell them that, hey, I know you usually send me stuff this weekend, let's take for example, but I'm really doing some stuff. Is it okay if I respond to you, such and such time? And most reasonable people will say, okay, I didn't really, you don't really have to do it this weekend if you're doing such and such stuff. So sometimes it's just being frank. Now, you can't do that every weekend. Now, I know back to your point about work-life balance, but if you're new in the job, kind of harder to pull that line of work-life balance. And I know it's very important, but it's still down to your supervisor and how they are. So whomever your supervisor is, you just got to figure out what they are, and then ask them. So ask them first and see if they're humane enough to say, oh, okay, no, don't worry about it. If you have stuff to do, they'll tell you. Thank you, Scott, for that question. Okay, that's a real life dilemma.
It absolutely is, Stephen. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. At this time, we will be wrapping up our question and answers. The webinar will be available, the recorded webinar will be available online at online.brianstratton.edu/webinar next week sometime. We will also be posting it on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you, Stephen, for taking the time to speak with us again.
Thanks very much, Morgan, and have a great time, everybody, and good luck on your future careers.
Thank you.